In Jackson County, the criminal justice system, a cornerstone of every flourishing community, is locked in an ongoing battle. At the center, jail overcrowding. The lack of necessary bed space is significantly burdening the legal system, resulting in a considerable number of alleged offenders being released before their court hearings and subsequently reoffending. This impedes the system's ability to function as intended, undermining rehabilitation, public safety, and limiting proactive intervention for individuals who commit crimes while grappling with mental health challenges and addiction issues. The current jail was built in 1981, designed to hold 176 inmates. However, by the year 1985, overcrowding had already led to a lawsuit that resulted in strict limits on housing individuals. The current structure does not meet seismic building requirements to support additional level expansion. Throughout the years, there has been no shortage of efforts made to maximize the use of space, bringing it to its absolute limit. However, with the continued growth in population, the crisis is only becoming worse, repeatedly pushing the system beyond its breaking point. The harsh reality is, unless there is a sensible solution implemented, this perpetual problem of jail overcrowding will continue to inflict more devastating consequences throughout Jackson County.
We see people out there struggling with mental health problems. When they're not getting the help that they need, sometimes people will go back to self-medicating, abusing or using drugs. You'll see that their mental health condition will go downhill a lot further, which is going to make it a lot harder for them to get the help that they are requiring. Currently, I work with veterans who are experiencing homelessness, substance abuse issues, and mental health issues. A lot of these individuals are found by law enforcement out there in the community who are suffering from a crisis. We couldn't find these individuals or help these individuals without law enforcement finding them first.
We see things daily that could be considered crimes or nuisance type activities like a disorderly conduct. The tough part for law enforcement, I think, is we get called to situations and somebody is in some sort of crisis. We don't have the expertise to unpack what is causing that particular crisis for that individual, whether it's drugs, a mental health issue, or combination thereof, or something else. And in the best interest of the community and in the individual, sometimes jail is a first stop. At that point, when things are calm, that's when we can use resources to evaluate and determine what the next best course of action is.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are lodged in the jail because they've committed some sort of crime, but they also are dealing with pretty significant mental health concerns. What that provides is an opportunity for us to get them the resources that they might need. And with the overcrowding issues that we're constantly dealing with, frequently those people who could use some mental health intervention, they have to be released before we really have the opportunity to get them a diagnosis and the treatment that they could use. I don't want to make it sound like they're not out committing crimes, right? Like, these people are allegedly committing crimes, but instead of keeping them for a few days so that we can get them into that treatment provider, they go right back into the same circumstances that got them in trouble potentially in the first place, and that loop never really gets closed, unfortunately, until a time comes where maybe the severity of the crime is enough that they get held in jail longer.
So if the jail's mental health capabilities could be expanded to where they're working with different organizations, case managers, therapists, peer support specialists, to get people connected to services, creating a safety plan and a release plan for the person who's going to be released soon, would speak volumes on getting people back on their feet again. We all have to work together to help with people who are struggling from mental health.
I've been clean and sober for 15 years now. My sobriety date is January 5th, 2008.
I have been clean for 5 years, 8 months, and 12 days. I spent a lot of time in and out of jail, absconding a lot. At one point, there was treatment pods in the Medford jail. If you did the treatment pods, you got to go out to the work center. I found that to be really successful, and I absconded a lot to get away from a domestic violence situation. Without the treatment pod, I found myself going right back out and getting loaded.
I'm a certified peer support mentor. I'm meeting where they're at in their recovery. I don't push them. I don't pull them. I'm right there next to you because I've I've experienced a lot of the stuff, so I could definitely relate.
So I'm a certified recovery mentor. My job looks like going into the jail and reaching people there. It looks like going out on the Greenway and trying to outreach there as well.
You know, we have a lot of people in our community right now who are dependent on some sort of substance, you know, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. And so those people, unfortunately, do end up committing crimes in our community. They get brought to jail for that. But if the charge doesn't rise to the level where we can hold them long term, they're released many times before they even complete like a detox process. And so not only can we not intervene and help them medically with their detox process, but we can't even begin to get to the point in time when they're ready to receive any sort of direction and assistance to get into a recovery program.
When they do that revolving door, they just go back to what they know. So when they get out, they're back out committing crimes and continuing their bad behavior. I think it'd be a great thing for us to be able to open up more centers inside the actual jails, but not just offering them recovery, but offering them job resources, offering them opportunities to get their GED and peer support. Then there'd be a different outcome because they already have a seed planted.
Having space and resources in the jail absolutely serves a positive purpose. It allows people to get into the pre-contemplation stage. It helps people find support, so when they get out, they know where the agencies are to go. They've already started establishing relationship and rapport with some of us in the community, and I believe it's absolutely vital. When we have CRMs in the Valley who have the okay to go into the jail, that's when we can really start reaching people. I have clearance to go into the jail because I have experience in and out of the jail systems. People are more prone to talk to me rather than, oh, you just read it out of a book, you have no idea what my life is, you don't know why I use or anything like that, and I do because I was an addict. But the jail is overcrowded and we do not have the ability to do what we need to do for folks struggling with addiction.
Knowing that we see folks being forced released, we don't have an opportunity to engage in those services that we know historically have been effective with the population. Sufficient jail capacity would be a game changer for us so that we could hold them long enough to intervene and provide the services necessary. The consequence for the adult on supervision is they may come out with the very same barriers that they went in with if we don't have sufficient time to work with them while they're in custody, or there's not sufficient services in custody in the jail to address some of the needs of the population. You know, specifically, we're looking at a lot of fentanyl use, and so we're seeing that the fentanyl use with our population is increasing. That impacts their time in jail. We know that when they release without appropriate treatment services, MAT, they're more likely to go out and use again, and that becomes more and more dangerous for that person. So we oversee juvenile department, which has detention, probation intake, and a residential treatment program. We have adult services, which is adult probation. And then we have the transition center. And that's where we have transitional housing. We have some residential services on site. Then we have sanction capacity. So the most important thing that we try to do is impact behavior change, right? We know that supervision alone doesn't work, just strictly treatment alone doesn't work, and we know that incarcerating folks alone doesn't work. So if we provide a balance of supervision services and sanctions, those strategies, the research shows us impact behavior change. A really important piece is that there has to be consequences associated sometimes with the population that we serve. We know that swift, certain sanctions impact behavior change. And that sanction doesn't always have to be incarceration. We want to use the least restrictive measure to impact behavior change that we can. There are times that we have to make the decision to place them in custody, the jail. And then if we're swift, certain with that jail sanction, and we provide an opportunity for intervention with jail sanctions, that removes the person from the situation and creates opportunity to intervene in the criminality or intervene in addiction sometimes. It also helps us keep victims safe. I think the jail provides us the opportunity to be successful as a community. Social services rely on the jail. Community justice relies on the jail, and we all rely on one another. And when we don't have that jail as an opportunity to intervene in criminal behavior, that impacts our social services in the community, that impacts community justice, that impacts the overall health and wellness of the community. We aren't able to keep people in custody long enough to try to engage in positive intervention strategies to help them release appropriately. These folks are people within our community. These are our own folks, and we have to find ways to support them as they move back into the community, at the same time ensuring our public is safe. And that's the importance of our jail.
Protecting the people of Jackson County is the #1 job of the public body of Jackson County. Everyone is designed towards making it a safe and livable place, and the criminal justice system is a big part of that. Adjudicating cases where people are accused of crimes, deciding whether that person is guilty or not guilty, and then making sure that person, if they're determined to be guilty, that they receive the appropriate sanction or sentence for that, which includes punishment, deterrence, and rehabilitation. And without a functioning jail, we just can't do that, just because of the size and the amount of people we can hold. The system functions with many parts. You have the prosecutors, you have the defense attorneys, and you have the court, and then you have the law enforcement, which is the frontline people who are catching people and arresting people and lodging people. The system breaks down when you cannot provide a place for defense attorneys to meet with their clients, and it delays the cases getting processed when people don't show up in court because they're not in a place where we can get them to the trial.
At one point years ago, a professional group looked at the fact that Jackson County had something that we called a chronic fail to appear group. They said that the fact that you've even had to discuss this topic shows that there's a problem that's associated between these forced releases and people failing to appear on their charges. And so not only do people who continue to fail to appear because of those early releases from jail have the opportunity to potentially reoffend and commit more crimes, but that caseload for the courts just kind of piles up.
The other primary way it affects the system is jail loses its effect as a deterrent to criminal behavior. If people know they're not going to be held for breaking into a car because we don't have the space, it becomes really difficult to deter that type of behavior. In domestic violence situations, you may have someone accused of beating his or her domestic partner, and that person will be released due to overcrowding. It is a community safety issue.
Our greatest fear is that we're going to have so many people in jail that are alleged to have committed really high-level crimes that we'll have to begin to consider those people for release back into the community. We don't want to get into that business of having to decide which of these offenders would be the least amount of risk when they've already allegedly showed a propensity to hurt other people.
That is every judge's worst nightmare, when we have to make release decisions, who to keep in. And even when we order them in, that's the big problem. We know that that person cannot stay there because there simply is not enough space. And it's a decision that the jail has to make. Accountability, along with deterrence and rehabilitation, are the principles of the criminal justice system for punishment. And the impact on deterrence and accountability are really hamstrung when you can't hold people who are convicted of doing a crime.
In Jackson County over the last few years, we've had a lot of challenges. When you talk about housing and addiction and mental health resources, all challenged. How that impacts the community is, I would say the livability is probably the biggest thing that I hear people talk about. And, so can you put a stat to that? Obviously I think people see it with their own eyes, and they don't need to be shown a stat to see what's going on or to be convinced that things aren't better. In my experience, the lack of accountability locally in our criminal justice system, with not having adequate resources from the public defender's office, the DA's office, and then certainly the jail, it can lead to this mentality of entitlement, or that there's no consequences for actions. And really, our business community is hit with this because They try to conduct business, but they have to constantly sweep their stoops for needles or human feces, and they're getting their things broken into or damaged, and their clients are having to navigate potentially hostile or unruly individuals when they're accessing their businesses. And so it really does detour from, people maybe wanting to access or use those businesses because of the perception things aren't safe.
Local business owners are frustrated with what's going on in Southern Oregon. Law enforcement's doing a great job. The problem is they book them and you see the same people doing the exact same thing they were caught the day before doing. There's been a lot of discussion on the current jail situation. Can we expand the current facility? The answer, of course, is no. We've looked at every option trying to solve this problem. And yeah, the business community is getting fed up. We have seen local businesses move out of the area. They just don't like the policy. They feel nothing's being done. We need a new correctional facility. That is apparent. And we, the business leaders, are behind that. More adequate space at the jail means more accountability. It's proven that incarceration with treatment helps people. It gets them out of their current situation. They get on the road to recovery, and they then contribute to society. It's a win-win for everybody.
Where crime goes, it expands. So as it grows, it starts to reach out and affect different communities in different ways. We've seen burglaries and thefts increase in our rural areas as well. People will go out to take items that don't belong to them to go fuel their drug habit. And our rural areas over the last few years have been especially hard hit by individuals who have engaged in the black market marijuana industry. I think there's a real attitude of entitlement amongst those that commit criminal offenses that it's very likely that they won't be held in jail if they are arrested. And so I think that drives people to our area in some instances, and I think it emboldens others who are here to take more risky behavior because there is not a strong chance that they're going to be held in custody. The community is the biggest victim because they're investing in our criminal justice system through their tax dollars, and it can be frustrating for the community, and over time it can cause those who entrust us to take care of them and keep them safe to wonder if we're doing our best to do that.
As part of the Southern Oregon community, every single one of us is being affected by the fact that people are being released early from the jail due to overcrowding, whether that's in the form of re-victimization or additional resources being supplied to these people who aren't getting the help that they need while in custody.
It's just a GED, but to me it was everything because it opened up doors that had always been closed. Having that made me feel more confident. It was like a whole new world almost for me. I got my GED while I was locked up back in 2017 in the Oregon State Correctional. Once I had my GED, going to barber school was an option because before it was never an option. I didn't have a GED, I didn't have an education, and that's like their bare minimum. With my GED, I applied to go to Vegans, the barber school. Once I applied for financial aid, I got approved, and I was like, man, the GED to me was important because I've never had something in my life that I did individually that I could be like, I did that. I did the work, I put it in, and nobody could take it away from me. It was mine, and I'm proud of that.
There are tons of opportunities that exist both within the state and nationwide of organizations that will come and they will help people completion of things like GED. Some things as simple as receiving their food handler permit. There's life skills opportunities, things like anger management, cognitive restructuring, cognitive thinking type programs. There's opportunity for people to go through these protocols while they're in the facility. But right now, because of our limitation in our stable population, we aren't able to do any of those.
Being a barber for me is awesome. Get to hear all kinds of stories, things that people are going through, different perspectives. I feel more financially stable now that I have a job that I can be proud of. My belief is that I get to help people feel good. And when people feel good, they do good. And so that's why I really love it. I definitely see value in resources for people in my situation. When you're locked up, that's the perfect time to implement those things because if you just put them in jail and then just let them back out, they're basically starting from where they were. I definitely think that the Jackson County Jail could benefit from such programs that I was able to take advantage of. A GED, definitely resources to help students apply for financial aid. Definitely the jail as it is right now doesn't have that. But if you do give somebody the opportunity to better themselves, they will take off with it. They'll take off and run in places you couldn't even imagine. That's what I did. I grabbed hold and I took off with it, and I'm not looking back.